wife or your significant other, and somebody says to the other one, I really need to take a vacation, right? Like, I'd love to go to the Dominican Republic, some all-inclusive resort, post up on the beach. I'm so tired. You don't think anything about it. You have a little conversation. And then an hour, 2 hours later, you're scrolling through Facebook, and boom, there's an advertisement for an all-inclusive resort in Punta Cana, right? Is the algorithm getting so good that they know that at a certain age, at a certain proximity to somebody, and during a certain time of the year, you're going to be wanting this? Probably. Is the little phone in your pocket listening to you? Maybe. But I can tell you this. It's only going to get better, or worse, however you want to look at it, right? Technology is only going to get better at targeting you and targeting your interests the moment you want it. 10 years from now, when this TED Talk takes place, we're going to be walking around with Google glasses. We're going to see a Columbia hood, vest. Our pupils are going to dilate, and boom, you're going to get a bunch of offers right there about who's got this vest on sale, what brands are competitors, right? Can everybody envision this future? It's coming. So as a business person, how do you keep your customers? How are you supposed to retain any kind of loyalty from your clientele? How are you supposed to retain loyalty from your employees, right? Imagine, you want a better job offer the moment that you hear that you're disgruntled and they get offered everybody that they can work for. That's a big problem. My answer to that is create community. Because you can switch products, you can switch company, but you can't take your friends. And to me, that's the most unifying force. I don't think it's a completely novel concept. If you've talked to anybody that's ever owned a Harley Davidson, they'll tell you that they can't change bikes because they'll lose their friends, right? These great brands have done it. Anybody here not own an Apple product? Yeah, you get made fun of by people with Apple, right?
Make fun of them back.
Yeah, exactly. But they've created community through these great, massive branding exercises that took a lot of money. They've taken really tactical approaches to doing this stuff, and the great brands have done this, right? They've created an identity around you, and you can now identify with other people that have it. And I want to talk about a brand that did this for me that's a much older brand, and maybe I can't call this a brand, but it's the Catholic Church. Growing up Catholic as a Hispanic male, I always identified with it, and as it progressed, I started to have my druthers with the church, right? Like I had my issues that took me away. But then there was a really big moment in my life where it all changed. And 7 years ago, my brother got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He battled it for 2 years, and he lost that battle. And throughout this whole struggle, the fact that my sister-in-law taught at the parish that we went to church at, my parents are Eucharistic ministers, we had all been a part of this community. At his funeral, 1,200 people showed up. And the feeling of support from that community is something that completely changed my life. It's something that I'll never forget. The idea that my sister-in-law could take off work whenever she needed because there was a complication. The idea that the kids got scholarships so they didn't have to worry financially for the schools. And then just that support, right? Like walking out as the pallbearer and putting him in the car and turning around and just seeing this ocean of people behind me. And then embracing the first person I was there. It really, really filled me up. And at that moment is when I realized, the church may be this religious institution, it may be a business, whatever it is. Churches have been winning by providing community. And it's one of the oldest models in the world, and it continues to work. And that's when I completely shift my focus to how can I create community as a product. So in 2009, I had moved back to Miami from California. I became a green building expert, and I started a green building company. And fortunately for me, I got involved with Habitat for Humanity when they wanted to start a young professionals group. We started this young professionals group, and all we did was plan happy hours, plan volunteer events, but each monthly meeting, we would meet with a board member, and we'd get to pick their brain about their careers as a young professional and how we can progress. Then we'd host a meeting, plan our events, and then we'd all line up to talk to this board member and get some advice from our career. That set me on a whole trajectory of becoming philanthropically involved, getting on the board of Habitat, other charities. I replicated this model across multiple charities with the help of some great friends in my community in Miami. And at one point, as I was building out this green building consulting business, my biggest customer absorbed me and I became director of sustainability, and it was a really great feeling. But 2 years in, this hospital builder that acquired me, it became very clear to me that I was just a satellite in their world. I didn't have an actual career path in what they had. And I started thinking, how can I add more value here? So as luck would have it, my CEO got invited to speak on a panel about smart cities in front of the Economic Development Agency of Miami. He didn't want to go, so they sent me in his stead. I'm a good public speaker, I'm the sustainability guy, it worked out. When I got there, I shared the stage with a couple of people that I probably shouldn't have been on stage with. One was the head of Latin America for a major technology company, and the other was the head of the Smart Cities Initiative for one of the World Economic Agencies. Got on stage, spit my truth. When I came off of that stage, something happened to me that had never happened before. And that's that there was a line 5 people deep waiting to talk to me. A couple of them were vendors, a couple of them were people interested in hiring me. One guy came up to me to ask me some career advice, who's a good friend of mine to this day. But what I realized in that moment is that the stage is a really, really valuable thing. And if you can provide somebody a stage, you can add this inordinate amount of credibility to whatever they're passionate about. That's what I realized. So I immediately thought, okay, if I'm trying to be more valuable in my company, how do I provide a stage for somebody else? And I reached out to a developer in Miami that was trying to build a high-rise in a low-density area because they were building on a transit way, on the Metro Rail system, and it's called transit-oriented development. It's a way to incentivize mass transportation, which Miami desperately needed, but because he was in this low-density area, people didn't want the project. So I offered him a stage. I said, I'm going to have a panel about transit-oriented development, put you on stage with a politician on the board of one of my charities that's into this, and a land use attorney that I started one of these groups with. Invited my young professional groups about an event about the future development of Miami and our need for public transportation. Hosted the event, no big deal, about 25 people showed up. But what happened the next week was, I got a call from this developer saying, are you guys interested in bidding on this project? And that completely changed my paradigm within my company. I became a business developer. So that's when I stumbled onto this community creation for business development ideology. I didn't have the language for it yet, but I knew I was onto something. I knew that having events, putting people on stage, bringing people together, you could aggregate some value and you could make a financial windfall out of this for the right kind of company. And then I got the chance to be the VP of business development for a startup software company for Amazon sellers. Now, I was so excited to prove this on a different non-local level and scale this impact out and really try this thesis of mine that I really didn't do my homework. I kind of jumped onto a burning ship. When I joined this company, I realized the CEO had just had a major public argument with his biggest affiliate that was responsible for a lot of recruiting a lot of his customer base. 2 weeks later, the head developer quit because this software that he had brought me on to pivot and to bring to a market in a different way really hadn't been working for the past couple of years. This was something that he had been saying for a long time. And then a month later, an old customer started a competing product one-to-one to what we're doing, partnered with this old affiliate, just started poaching our clients, right? We went from 500 subscription users per month to 300 in my first 3 months as VP of business development. Not a good look for the board, right? So what was I to do? I had this business plan of doing events around the country and around the world to bring together e-commerce sellers because I knew that being an e-commerce seller is a lonely world, right? And the budget was gone. But then I looked at our financials and I realized that our 12 highest paying customers made up about 30% of our revenue stream. And I thought, we can't lose any of these people. So how do we bring them on board? I reached out to each of them and I told them we're going to have a call every 2 weeks. And in that call, I replicated the young professional business model. We showed up, we gave a little bit of content about selling on Amazon, what we're seeing on software, what's working in our store, or something I had read in a book, right? Like a negotiations book, or we did a workshop, I gave a networking presentation, and then after those 20, 30 minutes, I'd ask, Ali, what are you struggling with in your company? And Ali would say something like, well, I can't keep my virtual assistants on board. They keep quitting on me. And I'd say, Jeremy, what do you do to keep your virtual assistants on board? And Jeremy would explain, and they'd solve each other's problems. And 2 weeks later, Ali would show up and say, man, I implemented these systems and everything worked out. And what ended up happening was these people really rapidly started to bond. There was a really watershed moment when an Eastern European gentleman that was part of this group that was pretty cold towards the group when we first started, basically just opened up and said, you guys are all my best friends now, right? Like, I feel like I found my family. I've been looking for this forever. And it was just a total watershed moment. So we thought, what's next? Let's put them together somewhere in person. So we went to Panama. We went salsa dancing for a couple of days. We toured the Panama Canal. And I gave everybody a presentation to present their business and in a systematic way. And I did a SWOT analysis for the whole team. And what we realized in that 3-day event was that each person in the room was really good at one thing, right? One person was really good at repricing. Another person was good at managing virtual assistants. Another person was really good at product selection, right? On and so forth. And my business partner, to his credit, he came back and implemented all these things that he learned from each person inside the store. And then we turned that into a class. And we sold that class for $5,000 a piece, and that was our first big fundraise after this whole economic disaster that we were going through, that we were in a downward spiral. The next step after that, we invited 9 of them to Jacksonville, put them on stage to highlight them in front of our customer base. And people showed up to learn from the person that, A, we started recording these phone calls and using this in our digital marketing strategy. So you'd see somebody that was saying, this software changed my business because I got this advice, and then they join our Facebook group, and they realize there was a cool club at the top of our customer ecosystem, and then, oh, there's an event where I can meet this person that recruited me in, I need to go. And we ended up creating $200,000 worth of revenue, cash flow revenue, off of just bringing people together at absolutely no cost to us. And I think that this model can be replicated by anybody, by a consultant, by a big company, by an upscale restaurant can do this kind of thing. You just need to understand the value in your clientele and the people around you and bring it together. So what worked in this, right? Number one, what we talked about. In my experience of what brings people together are 2 main things that bond people very quickly. One is a shared vulnerability. If we go through a similar struggle, right? Because you're from Venezuela and I'm from Venezuela, we know that our families have had, struggle with exodus. That bonds us. I recently met somebody who lost his brother, immediately felt connected to them, right? So shared vulnerability connects people. Second, adding value to each other's lives. If you can help somebody, they're connected to you forever. The Hare Krishnas in the late 70s, early 80s had a super successful campaign of just giving somebody a flower and asking for a donation, right? That flower didn't mean anything to the person that got it, but because they gave him something, they felt obliged to donate. So all we did was systemize. Show your vulnerability, have somebody help. Second, the stage. You have to have a stage. And while my stage first started as in-person panels in front of a live audience, nowadays there's stages everywhere. A Facebook group is a stage. An email letter is a stage. A podcast is a stage. A stage is a stage, right? It's the idea that the mind justifies what it sees. If somebody has your attention because they're standing in front of a crowd, you attribute inordinate value to whatever they have to offer. So that's why they say, don't believe everything you see on TV. That's why they say, don't believe everything you read in an email, right? Because once you're absorbing somebody's content, you give them that attributed value. So if you get really good at figuring out what each person has to give, what each person's value is, whether they're in your clientele, whether they're inside your company, or whether they're inside your network, then you can create a stage to then highlight those people and highlight that value to the rest of your audience. You create these all-time win scenarios, right? They're win-win-win scenarios. We're just aggregating value, and that creates community and bonds people together. There's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "In my travels, every man I meet is in some way my superior, and in that I can learn from them." That just means that every single one of us are unique. Every single one of us has walked a different path. So you have figured something that nobody else has figured out because you've had a unique experience. And if you get really good at understanding first of all, what your unique value is and what each person's unique value is, and start sharing that with others at scale, you are capable of creating community around you, whether you're one person, whether you're a business. And I want to leave you with this profound lesson that I learned from my brother. After the funeral, there was a great outpouring of support. And I heard from many, many people that I hadn't spoken to in a long time that knew my brother and I didn't know as well. And to a T, everybody told me, your brother was the nicest guy. He would light up a room. He would always bring people together. And I love my brother. And this is a quality that I absolutely admire in people, and I never saw it in him. I never gave him credit for that. And if I can miss that value in somebody that I admire so much, in a value that I care about so deeply, what are you missing in the people around you? What have you not seen that you can add value from someone to somebody else? I encourage you all to get good at that skill, lean into it, and create community courage.